Greetings, this is Gail Macinda with History Quick. Today I want to talk to you about a book I recently acquired. I love to read. I love my e-reader. I go through lots of books that way, but sometimes there's just no substitute, for me anyway, of actually holding the book in my hand. Somehow that transmits a different feel and sense of what the topic is, and this is one of those books. This is the instruction or suggestions for instruction in color. It was published in 1893. That's when this book was actually printed. So this is the first edition. It was written by Louis Prang, Mary Dana Hicks, and John S. Clark. We need to talk about Mary Dana Hicks in another episode for History Quick. She was an amazing woman, very, very interesting. And she actually later in life became the second wife of Louis Prang after his first wife, Rosa, died. Rosa and Louis had a daughter together, also named Rosa. And after his wife's passing, he and Mary Dana Hicks married. They worked together for a lot of years. And when you begin to study both of them, you can see where these common interests definitely were. Very interesting study. But today, let's try to keep it down to just talking about this particular book. Let me read from the preface a little bit. We offer this little book in the hopes that it may prove in some degree an aid to those who are endeavoring to develop the perception, appreciation, and enjoyment of color in the public schools. Now, this is a significant statement because one of Louis Prang's great passions was to develop art education for the public schools. He had been to Europe. He was actually from Europe originally. He had been back to Europe and saw how color was being taught in the public schools there and found it sadly lacking here in America. He felt that color education, art education in general, seemed to be limited to those children of the wealthy who were in private schools. And he really felt, and he wanted to make sure that everybody had an equal opportunity to study and appreciate art. And to that end, he developed a very extensive curriculum. And this is kind of part of that series of what he was trying to do. This is the teacher's guide on how to teach color. I think it is important to understand that his sense of teaching the theory of color was not just one of setting rules. He was a big proponent of letting exploration take its course, letting children experiment with things. And how did the colors relate to one another, and how did the children find themselves reacting, and what were their preferences and why? Prang was a very poetic soul. And if you look at some of his early chromolithographs, you can see this because he did so much with flowers. That was just an ongoing thing with him. And also butterflies and plants and sceneries and things like that. But flowers, probably more than anything else. Listen to this gentle soul. In the study of this series of colors, lead the children to observation and enjoyment of color, not only in fruits and flowers, but also to outdoor study of the trees and the landscape, the yellow-green of the fields in the sunlight, the blue-green of the distant woods, the blue-violet of the hills far away show beautiful transitions through intermediate colors. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a much more interesting approach to teaching color than at least what I had when I was growing up. This idea of poetry continues. There's a lot of examples of poetry within the book that are meant to be shared with the children to help them understand. Here's another one. It will add interest to the work if pupils are given some of the synonyms of color as they study the different colors. These synonyms are largely taken from the names of gems, which show brilliant, transparent color, and also show marvelously rich shades of color. The poet loves to use these names: ruby for red, amber for yellow, emerald for green, sapphire for blue, amethyst for violet. To him also, white is often silver, and yellow and orange are gold. Perhaps the pupils can find some examples of this use in expressive names. Here is a verse from Tennyson. A million emeralds break from the ruby-budded lime in the little grove where I sit. Ah, wherefore I cannot be like things of season gay, like the bountiful season bland. When the far-off sail is blown by the breeze of a softer clime, half lost in the liquid azure bloom of the crescent of sea, the silent sapphire-spangled marriage ring of the land. I don't know about you, but I'm not just surprised, but pleased to see this correlation between the art of poetry and the art of color used to explain the theory of color. I read more. This is towards the end of the book. It must be remembered that color education must depend on the cultivation of color sense, and that theory will not avail. For the presentation of color theory to those who cannot perceive color in its various modifications is useless. The power of color perception grows through cultivation. Emphasis his. That's in italics. The power of color perception grows through cultivation. And this is a multi-year course on how to make that happen. The question of color education is one that touches our whole life and is worthy of deepest attention. It has the strong practical side as tending to industries. It has an educational side as means of mental development. It also has a spiritual side. Through its study, a growing appreciation of the quality of color will arise, of color which lives and breathes, of glowing, throbbing color of clouds and sky, of color which expresses, and of color which controls mental state, of glad color and of sad color, of color which is inspiring and of color which is subduing, of color which is exciting and of color which is soothing, of combinations which are debasing and harmony which is exalting. Color is the purifying and sanctifying element of material beauty. So yes, the importance of color is what this book is about. But as much as the book is about color, I find it a valuable source to learn about Louis Prang and what his values were and what was important to him. We have a History Quick adventure pack, a unit study. I'll put the links to it down below if you'd like to learn more about Louis Prang, who was called the father of the American Christmas card. So there's a lot about Christmas cards in there, but also the father of art education in America. I suspect it was the art education that was probably more dear to him in his life. Now, like I said, this book was printed in 1893, and here's one of the reasons why I have to have the book in my hand. If you're going to teach color, you have to have some color. And I don't know how well this comes through in the screen, but there is one of just a basic color chart of 12 of the colors. That is so vivid. This many years later, I find that just absolutely delightful to be able to put my hands on that page. I guess I'm a bit of a romantic on that way too, huh? Later in the book, as the skills of the students develop, he has a 24 color chart. Each one of these colors is a little piece which is glued, attached on here. You can feel that it's raised in the ridges, but it's the vividness of the color that I just find incredible well over 100 years later. So we'll talk more about Louis Prang in time to come. But in the meantime, I hope that you will enjoy this little bit that we talked about today on the suggestions of instruction in color by Louis Prang. As always, we hope that you will like and subscribe and follow these videos. Again, all the information about the Prang unit and other units will be in the description box down below. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.